It starts with them being dateable. I don't think many of them are dateable.
Okay.
Because, again, I think not to sound like a broken record, but it goes back to an inability to understand others' perspective and to be able to practice empathy. And a lot of men are alone simply because they don't feel as though they need to change.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A More Perfect Podcast. I am your host, Mike Winson. Today, we are changing the conversation a little bit. Due to the realities of the world, we've obviously been spending a lot of time talking about politics. Well, today, we're going to talk about relationships, which is always fun because who doesn't love the joys of navigating a relationship? Well, we're bringing in a friend of this channel. She is a dating and relationship coach who specializes specifically in non-traditional, although she does deal with all forms of relationships. Her name is Kam Berard. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. I love your content as well.
Thank you. Thank you. One of the reasons I wanted to bring you in here and some of the stuff that we've mentioned back and forth is this idea of relationships in 2025 and how different they are, especially for people that are younger than us. Obviously, we're dealing with a changing society right now due to massive partisanship. And I feel like when you, or when, at least when I can't speak for you, but I feel like around when we were younger and started dating, there was this idea that politics and partisanship didn't make their way into a relationship. Do you feel that that's changed now more than before?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's one of those essential things to know about somebody before you even agree to go on a first date. And
Really?
I don't think the percentage of people that identify as, not political at all, has started to dwindle because everything's become so polarizing, right? And it's not just about political beliefs. I think we can all see some sort of common ground on a lot of various policies in place, but where it comes down to really is identifying core values and beliefs and how we view the world and how we view kindness and how we treat humanity in general and how we treat each other.
Yeah.
I cannot fathom dating somebody that doesn't believe in the same level of human rights as I do. That is not a political policy issue. That's just a simple, we should care about other people issue.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't have to explain that to someone and why it is more important than a particular policy issue when we have people that are identifying with a party because of singular topics, right? Because of those single voter, single topic voting issues.
Voters. Yeah.
It's so incredibly polarizing that you can't then connect with them on a number of other levels, right?
Yeah.
Because you're already starting on very uneven ground in how you see the world, what your perspective is on other people, your ability to empathize. And those are all strong indicators as to how someone is going to behave in a relationship. Are they capable of empathy? Are they capable of kindness just for the sake of kindness, not for something for their own good? Are they capable of removing their ego from an equation so that you can resolve conflict? And unfortunately, somehow those things have become part of that political divide.
Yeah. Do you see do you see a majority of this going on with the younger generations, or is this something that's kind of worked its way through all of them?
That's an excellent question. I do think it's very probably a larger percentage of younger generations are more steadfast, whereas older generations are going to have probably a little bit more flexibility in it, because they've already walked the middle line for so much of their life. That's what feels safe to them. It feels and also because sometimes they feel like they're up against a clock, or they are up against the realities of trying to find love again post divorce or post midlife crisis, or at different stages in life where you feel like your options are a little more limited, so therefore you can't be as picky. Whereas for young people, the world is their oyster, and they might have the luxury of waiting and being patient and being able to hold out for everyone that hits every one of their boxes. As the older folks might be willing to make more sacrifices in that realm. But I do think it's working its way to them too, where they want to have those core beliefs in common.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that in general, what you've seen is at least the general common denominator is things like the overturning of Roe v. Wade and women's bodily autonomy. Do you see other things that are also being those lines that women are stopping? Obviously, voting for Trump. I've heard that one probably 1,000 times. They're like, if you voted for Trump, that's an end. That's the end right there. But are there other things that women that you've noticed that women are considering, or even men? I don't want to just say that it's guaranteed. Obviously, it probably leans more on women doing it. At least from the stuff that I've read, younger men seem to be more willing to ignore politics, or at least not see how politics fit,
because they're privileged enough to not have to care.
Yeah, exactly. But do you see any other aspects that women are paying attention to?
Yeah, I think in general it speaks to an allyship. Someone who is supportive of trans rights, queer rights, supporting minorities in general, because again, this all lends back to empathy and understanding and using privilege for a greater good, to benefit others. And that speaks to a higher quality partner in life when you have those skills and that ability to remove yourself from your own experience and understand what the experience is like for others and care about that experience. It makes for better partners, because you're going to have stronger communication when you have empathy at play, when you have understanding and quality listening skills.
As we've been looking at the results of, say, the 2024 election and who voted for people like Donald Trump, they had a massive increase of young Gen Z men that voted for them. And one of the overriding reasons and the outcomes that we're seeing is the red pill content and a loneliness epidemic, that they like to call it, that has come from it. What do you see as the problem for this loneliness epidemic? Obviously, not dating can make them lonely, but I personally think that there's a little more to it than just not dating.
I also think it starts with them being dateable. I don't think many of them are dateable. Because, again, I think, not to sound like a broken record, but it goes back to an inability to understand others' perspective and to be able to practice empathy. And a lot of men are alone simply because they don't feel as though they need to change with whatever times. They are still worried about fitting the world into their script as opposed to writing their own script into the world. And it's so many of these men that have been fed this red pill, and are listening to other, bros on podcasts that are feeding them information about what their relationships should look like. This is
Mm.
all what men think relationships should look like. It's what men think are attractive. It's what men are perceiving as, what women want. Very few of them are actually taking the time to understand women at all. And they're more
Mm.
worried about how other men perceive them versus how women in the dating pool are perceiving them, and what is actually going to attract a woman that has the qualities of a partner that they might be looking for. They're not
Yeah.
worried about attracting a woman like that, a high quality person. They are worried about what other men think
Yeah.
is the desired outcome, right? So
Yeah.
that's why you look at guys' profiles and it's golfing pictures, it's fishing pictures, it's hats and sunglasses.
And
It's
cars.
this is what all my cars. This is what all my friends think is cool. So look how cool a guy I am. Well, are you trying to date men? Are you trying to attract other men?
Yeah.
No, if you're trying to attract a woman, a
Yeah.
woman is going to want to see your face, your eyes, maybe your hairline. But as much as they want to tell each other that we only want men that are 6 feet tall, make six figures, and the other six, um, it couldn't be farther from the truth. But no one cares to dive into what that actually looks like, because they
Yeah.
they simply do not view women
Mm.
as valuable ads in their own right. They think a woman is only valuable if they are the arm candy, that trad wife, type material. That's the only value that they see, because that's the value that they can control.
Yeah.
They don't want independent thinking women. They don't want self-sufficient women. And more women are getting to that stage in life where they are finding a lot more peace either on their own or with their friends,
Yeah.
and are raising their standards to only have people come into their lives that can also add to that value. And a lot of the men that are in this quote loneliness epidemic do not add value.
Mm.
Not that they are without value, but they
Right.
have assigned their only value to whatever they make. And if they're not
Right.
making anything, then they inherently see themselves as not having value.
Sure.
And if they are not emotionally intelligent, if they are not empathetic beings, if they are not good communicators, if they are not emotionally aware and in touch with any sort of element of their feminine side, not that they have to have a feminine side, but that energy, right, to connect with
Yeah.
a woman with, then they don't have much to add to someone's life. And until they make an attempt to understand women, I don't think it will change.
Yeah. Do you see, there's obviously one of the reasons that you're seeing a lot of pushback from conservatives on, places of women and men in society is because you're starting to see that change, this general change of what it means to be masculine, what it means to be a man, what it means to be feminine, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be in a relationship with each other. Do you see I mean, I think, do you see that part of the problem that I'm seeing when I interact with younger people especially is there's almost a lack of direction, or at least a feeling of a lack of direction. There's been plenty of reports coming out that young women in general are more educated, i.e., I would argue young women are working harder in
Yeah.
college than men are, because men are so used to not having to work too hard, and women have gotten very used to having to work their butt off to prove themselves.
For
And
everything, yeah.
a lot of the jobs that are out there right now tend to be more oriented to something that females have usually gone into. The healthcare industry right now is growing, and men tend to not go into like a nursing field or things like that, a place where a lot of jobs are becoming available right now. Do you see that? Do you see that change starting to happen? Like, is this something that are we just going through a pain time before society shifts? Do we just need a bunch of old white guys to just disappear before things change? Like, where's that tipping point?
I'd be lying if I said that I didn't think that would help the situation, because
I feel like that
I
could
do
help
think it
a
would.
lot of different situations going on right now.
Yeah. No, I think it starts with people are starting to recognize that the patriarchy hasn't served anybody. It hasn't served women, certainly, but it also hasn't really served men. Most men are not brought up understanding the tools for how to be an emotionally intelligent person, let alone a good partner. They are consistently told to man up and to not be a girl about things, and to, not to cry, not to show emotion, not to show weakness, and that this is what masculinity means. And I think we have a lot more people now, thanks to this younger generation, of saying, no, masculinity can look like a lot of different things. And if you ask women to define masculinity, particularly, you might get different definitions from conservative women versus more liberal women, right? But particularly liberal women will have a very, very different definition of what masculinity means to them than our conventional understanding of what masculinity has always been preached to be, right? And that shift is slowly, I think, moving us in a more positive direction, where some men are starting to do the work. We have guys like you out here talking about it and calling it out. We have guys like my male partner who are trying to use their pretty white man privilege to educate and to call things out, and to help encourage men to see masculinity differently. You have lots of other people in this space now that are starting to be more vocal and starting to educate. And I think instead of women screaming into the void that, like, listen to us on what we actually want, it sadly is still going to take men playing their part to change the opinion of other men. And the more men we have doing that, the more we can start to get to a healthier place as a society, and a stronger likelihood of more evolved relationships. Getting their time to shine, as opposed to this traditional model that has worked pretty much solely for men for our recent history. Or really all of history.
So I want to dive into just the general idea of what makes a healthy relationship, and kind of get your perspective on that. And the reason I bring it up, because my wife and we're going on 20 years this December, and there's a lot of our relationship, our marriage, that would probably be considered abnormal to what is traditional in a marriage. And I bring that up because I think there's this problem, just like with this idea of masculinity, there's there's this idea of this is what your marriage should look like, this is what your relationship should look like, this makes it healthy, this makes it not healthy. Obviously I think there are some things that kind of in general bind a healthy relationship, and I think if you could talk a little bit about things that you've seen that do kind of cross those divides of what makes healthy, but also, like, just talk about this idea of not just because your friend's marriage works X, Y, and Z doesn't mean that this is how your marriage needs to work.
Yeah. Those are some beautiful topics. First and foremost, as far as things that just make for a healthy relationship is healthy, strong communication. It all starts with communication, and that is equal parts listening and active,
probably more,
speaking, right? Yes. Being able to understand each other and communicate with each other in ways that the other is going to understand. You can't just speak your needs at someone, right? And expect to be heard and understood. You can't just make demands and say, well, I'm saying what I need. You have to be able to understand each other and come together in a way that suits both your needs and both your communication styles. And everyone's got different love languages, different attachment styles, different communication styles. You have to factor all of that into play in order to have truly strong communication that is going to reinforce trust and confidence in the relationship over time, right? Because when we have conflict in relationships, you have to be able to resolve them, and you resolve that through communicating. But every time you have a hard conflict and you're able to navigate it as smoothly as possible and come to a resolution that makes everybody feel heard and valued and seen and loved, and you can walk away from it feeling stronger afterwards, feeling more connected, you have just added like 10 trust points into your relationship. So you're not fearing every little problem, every little bump along the way. You're not fearing that the relationship will crumble and fall apart at the slightest sign of trouble. And then when big things like life do come along and someone gets really sick or injured, or major expenses happen with a home or a car, or you lose a job or something like that, and you have those big hurdles, now you can go into those big hurdles saying, we know we got this, we're a team. And you can find resolution. And that feeds into the next part of your question, as far as the non-traditional goes, right? It's this concept of relationship anarchy, which is, just this idea that your relationship doesn't have to look like anybody else's. It doesn't have to fit the script that society has laid out. It doesn't have to fit a hierarchy. It can be whatever you and your partner or partners have consensually, mutually, respectfully agreed upon as the terms of why you want to be in a relationship together and what that relationship is going to look like. And for some people, that's going to be drastically different from the other. And that's okay, as long as everybody's coming to it, again, consenting of their own free will and wanting that for each of their partners and for themselves. That is such a healthy approach, not only to relationships, but to just love in general. And that fuels evolution. So communication and evolution in relationships is what I think makes for an ultimately very healthy relationship. So when you're willing to evolve with your partner through communication and an open mind, right? And recognize that your needs and wants and who you are as a person is going to change probably 10 times over the course of a lifetime. Each decade you reach in life, you're kind of a different person in many ways. And there is nothing more reassuring and more anchoring than when you can know that you are in a relationship that is going to be willing to evolve with you. And
Yeah.
even if your needs and wants and desires through that relationship are going to deviate in how you want to go about doing it, because you have that solid communication and the ability to not fear coming to the table with what you need and how to communicate it, and knowing that you can problem solve together to try to evolve together.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that is when people do take a more non-traditional approach, and they're like, okay, well, we've done 20 years of monogamy and we've loved that. It was right for us for those 20 years. But let's face it, I'm like, people get into later stages in life, or the kids leave the nest, or they want to make a career change, or they retire, and they're like, you know what? I feel like my life is starting to flash before my eyes, and there's so much I haven't done. There's things I
Yeah.
haven't lived out. Or for both women and men, they might think, oh, you know what? I've always kind of identified as bisexual, or questioned this aspect of my sexuality, or I've never gotten to explore this part of, these fantasies. And the older we get, the more we start to want to recognize the parts of ourselves that have not had a chance to live yet.
Mm.
And I think that's what evolution is recognizing and validating those other parts within ourselves. And there's nothing more reassuring than when you can do that with your partner and have them validate those parts of you too, and encourage those parts of you in whatever way that they can. And in many cases, say it's a man and a wife, and the wife is bisexual and wants to explore that, and the man wants to facilitate that for her, because that's not something he can give her.
Right.
So that can lead down any number of paths, but
Sure.
it's all done in the name of evolving together, and,
Yeah.
and doing that through communication and through trust and the respect that you have built over the years, and just recognizing that we all change over time.
Yeah. As you were talking, and you were talking about trust, I think what came to my mind was, obviously, I think good communication builds good trust. I think one of the things that is important, I almost feel like one of the problems that we have in a lot of relationships, or just in society right now, is an extreme lack of trust of other people. Just trusting other people past the what they see right in front of them, kind of a thing. And the reason I mention it is, like, when I have an argument with my wife, we depending on what it is, it could get heated. But there's one thing that I know for a fact, and it's that she loves me. And no matter how frustrated I get, I can always fall back on that. And that always bleeds into what's going on at that moment and how it ends. And I feel like, and obviously everyone's situation is slightly different, but do you see that there's this almost lack of trust in what people say and feel in regards to each other that has caused us to, in some cases, obviously not all, but in some cases, jump to conclusions that we may not have if there was that level of trust and communication to begin with?
Absolutely. And this is actually why so many people struggle with dating in general, right? Because the dating scene is there's zero trust. There's a zero baseline of trust, right?
Yeah.
You have to go into every profile, like dissecting everything on display, and then go on first, second, or third dates. Just well, he seems perfect, but what's really wrong? What's he hiding? Is he
What's
love
hiding
bombing
under
me?
there? Yeah.
Gosh, love bombing, narcissism, like it just and then the game that it has become. The dating apps are a wonderful tool. They're kind of a necessary evil. They allow you to meet people that you never would have otherwise crossed paths with. And so I really do believe in their usefulness in dating in general. But instead of people treating it like a game, they need to treat it with strategy, as in a way that is healthier towards their actual goals.
Mm.
And they have gamified it in a way that protects themselves because they are afraid. Everyone's
Yeah.
afraid of getting hurt, and so they don't have that baseline of trust, and so they can't be truly vulnerable. People are not
Mm.
honest with themselves. They're not honest with others, and they're definitely not honest with themselves about where they're at in their healing, about what they
Mm.
want in a relationship. How many times have we seen people, they're like, I just want a relationship. I want to, imagine, this dream scenario of my life with someone, and then they date as though they're just trying to date as many people as possible.
Mm.
They date as though the grass is always greener on the next swipe right,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't actually get to know anybody, or they might get 3 dates in and be like, oh, this is the one, and then fail to actually get to know that person before jumping all in, and so then they get hurt, and then they go into the next dating scenario that much more skeptical. And so that is part of, my coaching mentality. Honestly, my whole mantra is relish every vibe. I think everyone should enjoy the dating process. I think it should be a cumulative effect of positive experiences so that we can all be more trusting, more optimistic, more hopeful, keeping that romanticism alive in our brains, that dating does try to kill. Every
Mm.
time you go on a bad date or a disappointing date, or you get, your hopes up on someone, and
Yeah.
you feel like you have the rug taken out from under you, you are that much more skeptical. And so now you're going into every single dating experience saying, what's going to be wrong with this one? How is this going to go
Yeah.
badly this time? And nobody trusts anybody for what they say at their word, because they have not employed enough strategy to put themselves in a good position to have quality experiences, even if those good experiences aren't necessarily leading to a romantic connection all the time. I can't tell you the number of dates I went on that were fabulous dates, wonderful people, and I had the best time, and they wouldn't necessarily be a romantic connection that turned into a relationship. But I walked away from those dates saying, that was a good use of my time. That was not a waste of my time. I'm glad I met that person. That was very stimulating conversation. In fact, it's odd how many people I am like still friends with, and my partners know and love, because they're just that quality of people. And people think
Yeah.
that quality people aren't on the apps, but they are. You can't be willing to swipe right on everything just because they hit a couple of boxes, or because they're attractive. And you can't hope to catch your dream person if you're just putting a few pictures on a profile and telling people that you like tacos and speak sarcasm. It's not putting any sort of vulnerability forward, and without vulnerability, you can't establish that trust.
Yeah.
You can't establish that deeper connection that everybody craves, but everyone is still operating from that base level of small talk and quick interactions.
Yeah. So on the dating side, to just try and play a little on the opposite, does that mean, are there also people out there that are trying for too much when they go on the dating apps? Like they're specifically looking for, quote unquote, the perfect man or the perfect woman, the one that fits every box on the dating app. Like how much is too much when it comes to the dating scene? Obviously you can only go so far. Like you got to go with what you feel comfortable with. Are there people that are taking it too far in when it comes to at least just dating?
Absolutely, because you have to be willing to go out of your comfort zone. You have to be willing to give up on a type. There are things that we want to accept as like our base qualifiers, right? Like being in line with values and core beliefs, like politics or religion or family goals.
Yeah.
Stuff like that is all very important and kind of are those must-haves. But a lot of people do get way too hung up on, oh, it doesn't fit these little tiny specific things, or they don't look like my type. I need somebody that has blue eyes and black hair.
Or is
No,
6'5".
Yeah, exactly. Or that has this particular job. I think people are really limiting themselves. And while dating is still a numbers game, I believe in the numbers game. I'm a strategist. I've built my corporate career being good at strategy, and I
Yeah.
just applied it to dating and then ended up having wonderful experiences, post divorce that I was not like expecting to have. And then I transitioned, to doing this for a living and helping other people enjoy their
Mm.
dating lives and their relationships as well. And it it does start at finding balance to say yes to things and being open to things or types of people that you might not have otherwise sought out. Um, because it only helps you fine tune more of what you're looking for, what you're willing to be flexible on and what you're not. And sometimes, and honestly, a lot of the times, something will take you by surprise. Look,
Mm.
I was not looking for the relationship that I am in. I was not
Right.
looking to become part of a throuple relationship dynamic.
Yeah.
It is something that just found me, and I had to decide if I was willing to be brave enough to say yes to it, and to say yes to that feeling that I was having, and the love that I was experiencing, and the love that I had been seeking out. It just came in a totally different package than what I had expected to find it in. And because of that, I am now happier than I ever could have imagined myself being.
Mm.
Um, and so, yeah, we have to be willing to go outside of these like ridiculous checklists that we might all have. Outside of, again, those core fundamental things that are much harder to find alignment on,
Mm.
and longevity, um, in relationships on. But somebody's height doesn't really impact that.
If you were talking to someone who was, say, our age and older, that was looking at dating, how would you start that process of getting them to learn to work their way out of that kind of difficulty?
I would encourage anyone at that stage in life to be prepared to learn a new version of themselves,
Mm.
and and that and to reinforce that we should all always be growing and changing and evolving and staying curious, and not grow stagnant or rigid in who we are, because the
Mm.
moment we do, we lose a little of that connection with the world around us, um, because you've already made the decision that it can only be one way,
Yeah.
and that your happiness can only look like one thing. When in reality, if you recognize that your happiness could look like a million different things, if you really ask somebody, like, what would make you so happy? Most people are going to say, well, lots of things could make me happy. A yacht would make me happy. A year traveling would make me happy. Money would make me happy. A beautiful wife would make me happy. Two wives would make me happy. You know, um, that list can go on and on. So
Yeah.
why then insist that your happiness has to look like one thing?
Yeah.
If we can just accept that happiness can come in so many different forms, then we might be a little more open to trying new things that might present a different version of happiness for us to
Sure.
decide then if we want to say yes to it or not.
Mm.
But exploring things, generally people, at a certain stage of life, particularly when they are nearing the end of their lives, most people don't regret the things that they did. They regret the things that they didn't do, right?
Sure.
And so if you just apply that to dating and relationships, or just even things like goals and hobbies and dreams that you want to accomplish for yourself, um just you just got to do it. You got to
Yeah.
be open to it, and it is a state of mind to start to relish in every area of your life,
Mm.
and find happiness in all its forms, because when you can experience happiness on a multitude of levels, you're just that much happier. You become
Yeah.
more optimistic, you become more confident, you become more trusting, you radiate an energy that is attractive to people. So you have an easier time dating.
Mm.
But when people are negative and living bad experience after bad experience, and you become this small version of, completely hopeless on, giving up on romance and stuff, that is not an attractive thing. Like,
Yeah.
people aren't drawn to that, but
What?
people are drawn to good energy. They're drawn to optimistic people. They're drawn to happy people. They're drawn
Yeah.
to confidence, and when you can say yes and grow your experience and grow who you are continuously, it just adds to your level of attraction, your happiness, and your capacity for multiple layers of happiness within your life.
Mm. Well, speaking of two wives, you as a, you like that transition? Speaking of two
Yeah.
wives, you as a dating coach of the non-traditional, you are, as you mentioned just a little bit earlier, are part of a throuple.
Yes.
Would
Spoiler
you,
alert.
before we go into this, I want to make one thing clear. Everyone is welcome in this community, in this podcast. We are not telling anybody what is right and what is wrong when it comes to what makes you happy in terms of a relationship. The reason that I wanted to talk about this with Kam was one of when I found her content on TikTok, one of the things that meant so much to me was just the pure joy and that you seemed to, or that you expressed being in a relationship that is considered non-traditional, that for someone who has been in a monogamous relationship their entire life feels awkward, and that's one of the, like, nothing against it, but as someone who has lived that way, it feels weird. So, could you just talk about not only what it's like being in a non-traditional relationship, but how you got to that point? Like, what were you going through? What was going through your head when it all went down?
Oh my goodness. Oh, where did I even begin?
Do we have time for that?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about it forever. So what it's like being in a non-traditional relationship, it's unlike anything I've ever experienced, because like you, I had spent my life prior to this relationship in hetero-monogamous traditional relationship structures. And while I had always had an attraction to women, I was never romantically attracted. I felt I was very hetero-romantic, and that I couldn't really develop feelings for women, but I thought they were beautiful and
Sure.
and attractive, right? So I considered myself a bad bisexual. And this was something that sort of caught me off guard. Post-divorce, I was dating and enjoying my dating life. And part of, like I've said, the numbers game and the strategy, you do get to a certain point where you are swiping kind of at the end of some of the apps to find those little gems. And it does take a lot of patience and time. And you have to be willing to go through stretches of time without matches. And yeah, I've reached one of those such times where it was like I reached the end of Bumble, and then they decided to show me a couple. And I was like, what is this? I didn't ask for this. Why is this being presented to me?
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, wait a minute, what exactly is it? And I believe that one was just an E&M couple that dated separately. And I was like, I don't even know that I buy this. Does he really have his wife's consent for this, etc.? And so my curiosity, I've always been a very curious person, and I love learning new things all the time. And so I was just really intrigued, and I wanted to know more, but I didn't even know where to begin a Google search. So I
feels
just
like a
swiped
weird
right.
Google search to start.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, my Google history those first several months was wild. I mean, Google has no idea. It was thrown for a loop. But so I swiped right on this couple, and I was like, look, I don't think this is for me, but I am really curious how it works and what led you to this. Much like the conversation we're having right now,
Mm.
people in general are always very curious to know what brought somebody to these decisions, or to these different formats and relationship dynamics, because there's so many that can exist, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I found, because once you swiped right on one of them, the algorithm was like, "Oh, well, here's some more," and then they were all different. I was like, "This is fascinating," and so I kept
Mm.
matching and being honest and upfront with everybody, saying like, "Look, I don't think this is for me, but I am curious if you're willing to answer some of my questions." And in many realms of the polyamorous community, you might actually get stonewalled, and people will gatekeep because they don't want to take the time to break in new people
Yeah.
who are just trying to dip their toe in the water, or understand, because they don't have the time, they don't have the emotional bandwidth to do that for them and hold their hand through it, only to get their heart broken, right?
Right.
I was very fortunate that people were willing to answer my questions, and be patient in educating me. And then that led to me actually meeting some of them in person, and it was a wonderful thing to witness in person, even knowing I was going into those situations with no pressure, and no notions of actually joining anything, right?
Yeah.
But I got to see some of these relationships on display, and the one thing that was so readily apparent to me was that they were very much in love. They were very much doing it for each other, with each other, as a way to make them stronger as a unit.
Mm.
You could see the respect and the quality communication between them, and it was very charming. And that's what got me thinking, I want a relationship like this. I don't necessarily need one that is going to operate under a non-traditional scope, but I want a relationship that has this kind of respect and love and
Yeah.
communication and admiration for each other, where they had clearly evolved together, because most of them didn't start out that way. Most of them started it from a monogamous, more conventional approach,
Sure.
and then ultimately transitioned there over time. Now, some of them had started together in that scope, but again, it just became something that I was seeing very healthy examples of it. And that's not to say that there aren't unhealthy examples of non-traditional relationship types out there. There certainly are. There are bad actors in every game.
Sure.
But I was fortunate to see very healthy ones. And then I started participating and actually including myself from a physical standpoint to
Mm-hmm.
explore. And that opened a lot of new experiences for me. Again, just kind of saying yes and being curious to learn and try new things and unlock different levels of happiness
Sure.
that I hadn't had the opportunity to explore in life. And then in one of those said situations, I met a couple that we were just getting together for fun. And the vibes were great. Connection was strong. And before we knew it, we were dating more than just seeing each other for fun. And then emotions started to come into play. And I was solo poly. I was dating other people at the same time. I had a couple of connections that were ongoing, and then I realized that I no longer, my head and heart weren't in those connections anymore. They wanted to solely be with my current partners, Will and Paige, and that's when I was like, I don't want to continue to date other people. We wanted to all be together, and they were noticing that they were having their own feelings now about, that had shifted, where they were very supportive of me dating others when we were getting together for fun, and then it was like, oh no, we just want to be with Cam. We want Cam, to ourselves, and I wanted them to myself, and then we ended up navigating those initial feelings and admitting those feelings, because we fought against them for a long time. Because we're like, this isn't normal. This doesn't fit the script. This doesn't fit what I thought I was looking for, or how I thought love would be packaged. And they certainly, like, one of their boundaries was that, like, nobody else would be, like, truly included in their relationship, that their
Mm.
relationship, their coupledom, right, would remain firmly
Right.
intact. And when confronted with love,
Yeah.
you just have to be willing to say yes. And that's when they realized that they weren't only willing, but wanted
Mm.
nothing more than to just no longer be two. They had no interest in being two any longer. They wanted it to be the three of us.
Hmm.
And they ceased to see themselves as Will and Paige. They're like, no, it's Will, Paige, and Cam. Like, if we get invited to a wedding, it better be an invite for three. If, we go anywhere, we're going as three.
Which you just went to one as a three, if I saw.
Yes, we did. And we have another one in October. So it was great. Nobody looks at us sideways. They just see love on display, and they're like, y'all look like any other relationship. There's just three of you.
Have you noticed that the perspectives, how non-traditional relationships are viewed now, has just in general become more accepting?
I'd
or
like
at least
to
people
think
are more
that.
open to the idea of it?
Yeah, I think more people are open to it when confronted with it than if you were to ask them, generally speaking. Most of them would be like, oh no, monogamy, traditional, all the way. But then you put a throuple in front of them, and they're like, I've always secretly wanted that. Or like, I didn't know that was an option. How do you do that? And we're like, hey, you have a conversation, and you kind of explore, and you see if it works for you, and what you experience, right? Because some people are absolutely built for monogamy. They are born monogamous, they feel monogamous, and it's not just a conditioning. But for many people, we are just conditioned for monogamy because that's what society has told us is the norm and is the appropriate life path, right? And with polyamory, I find it very interesting because I do think people can really identify as polyamorous from the get-go, and others evolve into it, and choose it as something that they can really identify with.
Yeah.
And then you have others that are equally happy, fluctuating between the two, like from more of a relationship anarchist perspective. Of I could be happy being monogamous. I could be happy being polyamorous. I'm currently existing somewhere in between because we practice polyfidelity, where we are a closed throuple. We don't date other people. We don't sleep with other people. It is just the three of us. So we are monogamous, just the three.
Right. And that's what I was going to say, because at least in your case, it feels like when I hear about how your relationship was working, I was thinking to myself, well, it's very much like a monogamous marriage, except there's three people now, and you're not going any farther, as opposed to what I think a lot of people think, which again, I know it's out there, but I know a lot of people, when they think of polyamory, they think one or many or multiple people in these relationships, just dating bunches of different people because they can't, they don't want to, they can't handle monogamy.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you said that, because there's such a major preconceived notion and assumption that polyamory equates to this sexual promiscuity, right? It couldn't be farther from the truth. A lot of polyamorous relationship dynamics don't even have a sexual component. So it's not about sleeping with as many people as you possibly can. It's about fulfilling the different sides. We all have different friend groups, right? That add to different areas of our lives and speak to different areas of our personality. And romantic partners can be just that way too. That they can add to our life in a multitude of ways. And it's not always it's not always a sex thing, right?
Yeah.
And people also then tend to equate, those that really have no base understanding of polyamory will tend to equate it with like swinging, which both polyamory and swinging are under the ethically non-monogamous umbrella, but they are on polar opposite sides.
Yeah.
Whereas swinging is exclusively for sexual exploration and enjoyment, and polyamory is about more deep connections and
Right.
meaningful relationships that can certainly include a sexual component, but it's not for the express purpose of being, sexually involved with a number of people. And
Sure.
obviously with polyamory, people reach their cap of how many partners do they have the emotional bandwidth
Capacity
because love is not a limited resource, right? We can love any number of people, but you are limited on time and you are limited on energy, and everybody has to decide how many partners can you have without it degrading all of those relationships because you're stretching yourself too thin, right? And that's ultimately one of the reasons we decided to close our throuple and practice polyfidelity, was because like this is going to take a lot of work and we want to create a family together. We want to do life together. That's going to take a lot of time and energy, of which we already have limited time and energy with each other on a daily basis. How would we possibly add another person to the mix? But for us, it's a sweet spot because we have that added support.
Yeah. So the real question that I have for you is, do you and Paige both steal the sheets from Will?
I think Paige steals the sheets from both Will and I. Yeah.
For both Will and you. Wow.
Because she's usually in the middle. And she'll do a lot of like grabbing and then tucking and tossing and turning. And
is she one
Will
of those people
generally
that gets cold? That just always
she's
cold?
so cold. Yeah, always cold. So she ends up in the middle. And then Will is the most frantic sleeper I've ever seen. You wake up and his side of the bed is just demolished. I don't even think he uses the covers most of the time. I think he's literally at war with them. And my side generally stays exactly how it was when I went to bed. Not that I don't move, but I'm like, I can get out of the bed and like pull my covers up and the bed is made.
There you go. Well, it's always interesting. You can always tell a good conversation is going on because all of a sudden you look up and you've been talking for an hour. Kam, thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for talking about this. And I would love to sometime in the future bring you back. We'll see what comes of it. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you if they want to know more about not just your services, but where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, I let's see, website is Rev Dating, REV. It stands for Relish Every Vibe. And then my TikTok handle is at relish.every.vibe. Not easy, I guess, in that component.
We'll make sure to put it all down in the description below, but
I appreciate that. And then Rev Dating on Instagram and YouTube as well. Although admittedly, I don't post there as much. They are more my backup channels in case TikTok, ever goes away. But
they're changing the TOS coming up, so
I know
things will be interesting.
It is wild.
Yeah. Thanks again for hanging out with me. For everyone listening that made it this far, thank you again. If you like what we do here, please like, subscribe, share with people. What we're trying to do on this channel is have conversations, have sometimes very hard conversations, but we're trying to make a community and a coalition of people who truly believe that all people, no matter your race, religion, gender, or identity, deserve rights, respect, dignity, and safety. And the only way that this is going to grow is if more people like Kam and me and all of you listening can get together and take that basis agreement of fundamentals and figure out the other stuff as we move forward. So again, thank you all for being here. Like, subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode of A More Perfect Podcast.